assembler, a better assembler, a subset of C, Fortran callable routines, and then a lot of application-specific microcoded functions that we supplied as packages. In addition to the bit slice, specialty processors were coming along. This is a multiplier accumulator. There was a big rack that was the matrix multiplier that was in Ivan's pictures this morning. My matrix multipliers, again, on one of those small cards, it's about that big. The main thing being this big chip that did 16 by 16 integer accumulate through that. The white, oops, that chip. White up in the corner, the divide, those are lookup tables to help you do sines, cosines, and begin to do division faster. That's a hand wire-wrapped board. There's nothing elegant in the colors in that, and the fact that there is rework on it says that the data flow wasn't as pretty as it should have been. But what did people do with this? People programmed flight controls and for airplanes, seismic processing. Notice that they've selected the levels, and those are transparent. MRI and CT scans had just come out. People programmed how to do volume rendering on this machine. Made a simulator for using an oil tanker. They put 8 of them together around a room. And sort of the piece de resistance in the mid-'80s was doing ray tracing in real time, not real time, real tracing on here. It actually came down the screen about like that. But these were, B-spline described surfaces that were subdivided and completely rendered on that bit slice processor. So the two big things, memory density and the bit slice processors that we made user programmable. You may think that that sounds a little bit like how GPUs are used today. We like to think this machine is the old DNA for the GPUs of today. There was this period in there that people didn't microcode and didn't program the processors themselves, but that's kind of come around again. There are a couple of sources for you if you want to see some more of this kind of work. Thank you. That would be my husband, but he was much younger. I told you it was cute.
Thank you, Mary. And now we're going to present Preserving the Past. We're going to show you our SIGGRAPH Art Archives, which encapsulates all the art contributions presented at SIGGRAPH from 1980 to the present.
Because of the innovations in hardware, artists began to dabble and sort of wrangle those computers into creating amazing works of art. And a lot of those were shown at SIGGRAPH throughout the years. One of the things that I became concerned with very early in the 90s was that this amazing material that was presented at SIGGRAPH would exist for a year in the memories of the people that attended the show and then sort of disappear. And so we did have some catalogs. Not all of the work was actually documented in the catalogs in some of the early years. So Jan and I, well, actually, I started this in the 90s, but 3 years ago, Jan and I decided to take a lot of the materials that I had done in the 90s and completely revamp it so that we had this one comprehensive archive that you could look at all of this work from 1980 to the present. And of course, this required a lot of research just on what was out there and what was available and gathering materials. It also involved in 2017 developing a brand new back end and also collecting all of that content. And we also had to do a lot of scanning from the catalogs and contacting individuals.
I'd like to also acknowledge the wonderful support we've gotten from the ACM and ACM SIGGRAPH that helped support this project. So you can see some of the statistics. We're going to go to a live show shortly, so you will be able to see this in all of its exciting aspects. But just so you know, there were 64 art shows throughout the years, starting from 1980 to the present. This included SIGGRAPH Art Shows, SIGGRAPH Asia Art Shows, and also DAC online exhibitions. You can see there are thousands of artworks. And our students will show you just the level of work it took to get that entered into the archive. We have thousands of people who contributed over the year, and many people in this very room will find that they have their own artist page or contributor page that is already in the archive. We'll get to how you can get in touch with us about contributions later. We also included the art papers and art panels and all of the writings that presented in this archive. So you'll see it in action, but just so you can see that recently you can see that a number of people have visited the site and viewed our pages. We will be passing out a postcard that will have our URL, and we encourage you to both explore our archive and also contribute to it.
And we just want to put out a shout out to our team, 3 of which are here, and you'll be hearing from them soon. It's really been a big team effort, and that is we've had a number of students from Bowling Green State University in Ohio contribute their expertise and creativity, and they've learned a lot in the process and also taught me and Jan a lot. Brilliant students. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the archive live. And just because we weren't sure of the networking capabilities, the speed and all, we put it all in tabs. Essentially, what we have is no mouse. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay, good. Okay. So I'm going to bring you through the archive real quick. We have the material separated into 5 main categories. You can see that we have an artwork category that is broken down into subcategories, and each of these subcategories, oh my, okay, hang on. Thank you for telling me that. Displays and arrangement, and we'll put this over here. How's that? Do you see it now?
They do see it now.
And now I don't see it. Okay. Oh, yeah, mirror. Gather windows. Okay. Okay. When we get back to the PowerPoint, we may need you back. Okay, so we have hundreds and hundreds of artworks, and these pages just go on and on and on and on. This is just the 2D artwork category, and as you can see, we have nearly 20 pages. If you click on one of the artworks,
you can select an artwork such as the artwork of Yuichiro Kawaguchi. This is his piece Origin, and it tells you information about the artist. It tells you title, what art show it was in, information about the category and technical information. And you can also click on an individual artwork and see it in more detail, or you can click on the artist's name, and as you can see, we have all of the contributions that Yuichiro Kawaguchi has made throughout the years. It has his bio and his affiliation and the artworks throughout the years.
we can also get to the individual contributor pages by clicking on one of the tabs in the main menu. And if you do that, it lists you, you select them by their last name, and it lists all of the individuals with that name and all their contributions throughout the year. And it could be that they organized a conference, or they organized an art gallery, or they had artwork, or maybe they were a contributor, and there's multiple pages. And also, we have a tab that you can access the information by selecting the exhibition. We have 3 types of exhibitions: the SIGGRAPH Conference exhibitions, SIGGRAPH Asia, and the Digital Art Community. If you're not aware that they do online exhibitions year-round. And we have all of the years since 1980 to the present. We're still working on it, so you may find some missing material. So, but we're working on it. And if you go to the year, if you click on the year, some of them have 2 or 3 exhibitions. You select that year. It brings you into a page with information about that, and it aggregates all of the artworks that were shown in that particular year. Some of the exhibitions had quite a few contributions. Here are the SIGGRAPH Asia shows and the Digital Art Community shows.
We also have many writings and talks, essays, panels, papers.
I'll be the clicker, sorry about that.
That's fine. So, for instance, you can look at a listing of all of the art papers that have been given throughout the years, with the author, the abstract, in many cases a PDF that was downloadable.
And now we'd like to invite the students that worked on this to come on up and talk a little bit about their contributions.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Amanda Glass. I'm one of the digital archive content managers. And so I started out by scanning many catalogs from all of the various years of art shows, and we scan them at a very high resolution so that they're as good as we can get them, and edited and cropped them and added metadata, so no matter where someone gets the images, they know who the artist is, what the name of the piece is, and where it came from. We also used OCR and was able to create searchable text versions of all of the papers and writings. Yeah.
Oh, is this on me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Megan Miazgowicz. I'm the other content manager. So one of the other things we were doing, in addition to scanning and getting these artworks and art papers prepared to be put in the archive, was we had to go through and add in every person that contributed in some way. So this is what like a typical artist page would look like, or a person page. So basically for each person we added, we had to add the name, the last name. We had categories using pods, which Jack is going to talk about later. But to add the bio, what they contributed, what kind of person category they fit in, where they're from, that sort of thing. And we did this for everybody. We also did a similar thing with the artwork. So for every artwork that we entered in the archive, we had to add the picture, we added collaborators, the artist statement that we went through and proofread as well, whoever the artist was, what year it was, and everything like that, so that anyone who clicked on the artwork page would be able to see as detailed of information as we could find. Am I doing writing too? The other thing we added was writing. Again, it was a similar type of archiving. We would upload the PDF after converting it to what it needed to be converted to. We would add the references in so that you could see the references on the information page, as well as like the author and what type of writing it was. Yeah. So.
Hello, I'm Jack, and I was the website backend programmer for our project. And so we had all this information, and we needed a way to categorize it and link it to each other to build our website. So we used pods to great effect for this, with where we created these pods that had custom fields for all of the different data types that we needed, like the name of the artist, so on and so forth. And then we connected them with custom taxonomies to be able to link the artist with the artwork and to link all of our pages. So we have all these custom post types, such as 2D and wall hung, the 3D and sculpture, that we then create custom templates. We create the custom templates and populate them with all of our pods data that's linked with the custom taxonomy, so that we have generated pages for each of our artists, our artworks, and writings. So here's a sample of some of the code from the custom templates that we use for artworks.
And our future goal is to have some visualization artists or some volunteers come and join us and do a little visualization of this data. So we've been playing around with a few approaches. We'll be finishing up with adding content probably in the next month. And so at that point, we're going to start to make more connections, working with keyword glossaries and taxonomies and that sort of thing. Jan?
Now we need to get over to the slides.
Okay. We're going to jump back and not mirror the displays. There we go. And, okay. Hang on. I think I can do it. Come on over there. Okay. Good. Okay. Perfect. Oh, not perfect. Can you guys see that? Oh, no, I've got to swap that display. I have no mouse. Could the tech guy come, please? Yes. Oh, wait, there it is. Sorry. Okay, perfect. Perfect. We'll wrap up real quick. We need your help.
We are actually out of time, but we need your help. You may have noticed we are missing some artworks. We have tried to make it easy for you to send in your suggestions to try to find some of these artworks, better images of them. So if you go
to the main page, and she's going to be passing out some cards. The students actually be walk around, pass some cards when we're done. Please go to the main page, click on one of these links if you know anything more about the artworks, talk to the artists, track them down. We're missing some work, okay? We also, if you're an educator, please go and please incorporate this into your class. Students really need to learn about the history of digital art. And we have fairly low-res images for some of the older works. We'd love to get better images.
I also want to invite you this Wednesday. We are going to have a BOF, Paving the Way. This is going to focus on digital art at the SIGGRAPH from 80 to 99. And this is a more informal type of discussion where we can share stories and talk about these things and listen to some of the pioneers talk about their contributions and you having discussions with them. So it is in the East Building, room 11.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, technical difficulties aside, I would be my pleasure to introduce Darcy Gerbarg. Darcy was the very first art show chair for the SIGGRAPH Art Shows. Darcy.
Hello? Oh, okay. So I'm an artist. I started looking around to see what technology was available for my generation. And at that time, people were inventing video and people were inventing digital technology, computer graphics as well. I was not interested in moving images, so I set about to find out what was going on in computer graphics, and I came across Ruth Levitt's book very early on. And Todd Mackover, who's not Todd, his father, Carl Mackover. Todd is, I think, at MIT or Harvard. He's a composer, digital composer. Invited me to be on a panel. I had never used computers to make art at that time. So fairly quickly, I came across an article by Albie Ray Smith on the Color Cube, and I thought that was probably pretty close to what I was interested in. And I contacted him, and he told me that the SIGGRAPH conference was in 2 weeks, and if he saw me there, he'd take me more seriously. So, so I called Tom Duff, who was this legendary SIGGRAPH Art Show chair, and he was very interested in having artists be involved in SIGGRAPH, and he asked me if I was, I said, listen, I don't work for a company, and I'm not at a university, and it's pretty expensive to get to Chicago from New York and stay at a hotel and go to a conference. And he said, well, do you fit into the indigent artist category? And I said, no, I'm not really indigent. And he said, well, if you come and you're willing to volunteer to help, the conference will cost you $25 if you come. And if you help, it'll be free. And I can find a hotel close to us that's like, I don't know, it was like $14 a night or something near the airport. So I showed up, and I basically met everyone at that conference who I still know for a long time. This was 1979, okay? And the researchers at NYIT were very friendly, and they invited me out to the lab to see what was going on, and I became what I sort of called myself an undercover artist, because I worked there kind of on the computers when nobody else was using them, late at night, every night, using Albie Ray's paint system to make art. Okay. Okay. I was, in '79, I believe, the only artist at the SIGGRAPH Art Show from the art world itself. I was at that time, all right. Okay. I was at that time part of a community of artists in New York, abstract expressionist painters, some of whom were very famous. I was very young, and I just had this belief that the leading artist of any generation was using the latest technology for their time to make art, which probably isn't true, but that's what I believed. So I pursued that, and I very quickly started making images that I found interesting on Albie's paint system at NYIT. That was all great, except I was used to large-scale paintings that I was doing in acrylic or something like that, about, you know, could be 8 feet high by 6 feet wide, or pretty good size. And here I was with a little monitor, and there was a picture there, and what in the world was I going to do with that? So my career has basically been finding out what I could do with this tool and figuring out how to get that digital information into a physical form. This community thinks about it as hard copy. I was trying to make actual artwork. So I approached it the same way I would any art material. You sort of find out what it does, figure out how you can use it to create what you want to create, and go with its strengths and so on, and make a decision whether that's the tool for you or not. Fortunately, NYIT had full color system with their paint system, and so I was right away very spoiled with 24 bits of color and tablets and pens. From my perspective, a painting is one image, and unlike animation, which is 24 frames a second or 30 or 60 frames a second, my feeling was that when you looked at film or animation, one of the things that made it particularly visually interesting was how much information there really was in each frame. But maybe that's not true, I'm not sure. There were a few artists who were making art with computers. Most of the artists involved at SIGGRAPH were interested in moving images. I was interested in physical medium, so I explored various printmaking techniques, carpet formica, scanning murals. 3M had a big plotter. They could spray inkjet spray onto canvas or other substrates, and still making large-scale paintings. So initially what I did was I would make a picture on a computer, I would output it onto film, and then I would project that on the wall. I would then mix the same color and pigment that I had made in light, and I would airbrush very large-scale paintings. Okay? I showed many of those at SIGGRAPH over the years. So for me, film was a transfer medium. I wanted to know what artists were doing. I'd always wondered what artists thought they were doing throughout history. So I knew about art history. I knew about artists in all kinds of periods. And I was curious to see what artists were doing who were using computers. I don't know where I am in this talk, actually. When I got involved with the SIGGRAPH group, I found that the computer scientists had a lot of knowledge, both about what techniques artists had used in the past to create three-dimensional looking images on a two-dimensional picture plane, and also about color and drawing. A lot of the leading computer graphics people had taken a lot of art courses and really knew a lot about making pictures and images and were interested in that. They were making, and a lot of them were making very interesting images, but none of them thought of themselves as artists at that time. I wanted to display my work at SIGGRAPH in 1980. And I had discovered 3M scanning murals, and so I talked to SIGGRAPH and I talked to 3M, and they were interested in promoting that their scanning murals in the SIGGRAPH community, and they agreed to produce 2 artworks for SIGGRAPH that year. And these were kind of the first two-dimensional artworks of scale that were displayed at SIGGRAPH. So it was decided by, I forget exactly whom in the SIGGRAPH community, that since Lauren had just done all his gorgeous landscape, fractal landscape images, and it was just now joining, just before he joined Pixar, he was still at Boeing, that they would print one of Lauren Carpenter's pictures, which is, okay, sorry, which is of the same series, but not quite as smoothed out as this one, as this image that was used on the SIGGRAPH proceedings cover. The image on the other image is a black and white picture of mine that was on a poster for that image, which I had shown at another art exhibition as well, and that was a color scanning mural as well. At that time, there were a number of Tom Duff and Dan Sandine in Chicago had a number of students who were interested in making artworks, and they also produced a number of pieces on their systems. Mostly, they were all, I think, printouts, and we also displayed those in 1980. So this was really before we had any kind of formal art show. Now, I'd like to say that in prior years, there were crazy kinds of arts events that did take place, mostly performances and costumes and all kinds of parties and things when SIGGRAPH was really much smaller, but I wasn't around at that time. So you'd have to find someone who was for more information about that. I can say that there were certain discussions that everyone in this SIGGRAPH community was having about art and computers. And one of the big issues was, what was the art? Was it the programming itself? Was the program the art, or was the finished product that you saw printed out or in some way displayed as an artwork the art? I maintained that an artwork was something that was that I was interested in, was a physical medium, and it was something that you could see, and it was stable and stationary and would be around for a long time. In doing my research to see what else was going on in this field, I came across Ruth Levitt's book, Artist and Computer. Quite a few artists had work in that book. Some were computer scientists, most were artists. The only computer art exhibition that I'm really aware of that happened before that was the exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art, EAT, by Billy Kluver. And this book, of course, is long out of print. This particular book, the cover is printed metal. Now, I'm a little fuzzy on some of the exact details, but my memory is that Doug Green and Tony Lucido and Henry Fuchs were the chairman in 1981, SIGGRAPH chairman, and they asked me if I would do an art show for them. I was humbled by this because I was very new to SIGGRAPH, and I did have experience working on art shows, and I was familiar, obviously, with museum exhibitions and gallery shows. I was going to them all the time in New York with everyone. So I needed to find a space to have this art exhibition in Dallas. Apparently, the conference center that SIGGRAPH had booked they felt they didn't have enough room for an art show. So I called a friend of mine, Clement Greenberg, who is arguably the biggest art critic of the last century. And he suggested that I could talk to the director of the Dallas Art Museum and see if he could have any suggestions. And they did come up with 3 ideas for me. And I chose a location that was actually in the same building as the conference center. It was a public, I forget exactly what that building was. It was some sort of office, something or other. And this was a big space right at the entrance, to the side entrance to the conference. And we had the exhibition there. Now, in terms of how I came to find the art for the SIGGRAPH Art Show, I'm also a little fuzzy about that. I was having an exhibition of my work at the Electro Arts Gallery in San Francisco, and I met Ray Lozana. Ray had been involved with computer art for a little while, and he suggested quite a few places for me to look to get art, including an exhibition that had been in Canada, and a whole range of artists. That was one way that I found artists. I was in touch with Ruth Levitt, and I knew her book. I tried to contact all of the artists there. Stan Vanderbeek was also very helpful, and Joe Scala had been active in SIGGRAPH before that. Joe and Patsy Scala, they were helpful with names. Basically, I reached out to everyone in the SIGGRAPH community and anyone who knew anyone who was using computers to make art, and invited people to provide artworks, 2-dimensional artworks for this exhibition. I accepted all the work I could find. Since there was this big issue about whether the art was the program or whether the art was the artwork, I decided to ask Tom Duff to write a program, a 1-page program that had something in it that only a programmer would get, that was maybe funny or something about it. I took it, he gave it to me, I blew it up to about this big, and I framed it and I hung it in the art show because it was a big issue at the time. This is the list that I had wrapped around the only box of slides of the works that were in this exhibition. I hadn't seen this for, you can imagine how many years. It took me forever to find it, weeks and weeks. And this is what this sort of looked like. This is actually the list of the artists that was wrapped around this. Now, I'm not positive that all the artists listed in this art list are actually in this exhibition, but this is what was available. And this is a sort of subset of artwork shown in 1981. Let me go back to that one. There we go. That said, last Tuesday night, I found this box of slides. We're talking about 35 millimeter Kodachrome that I took with my camera on a tripod of this artwork. These slides were really dirty. I was not someplace where I could get anything that I could clean these slides with. I bought a new film scanner for this occasion. I hadn't used it yet. It was a lot to just get this work in here and available. I'm hoping that all these wonderful student volunteers will be able to clean up these slides, and this will be better in the future. If anyone has any questions, yes. I don't know. I'm not a programmer. I can't tell you that. You have to ask. I think you know the answer. You said you read it and you thought it was hilarious. Someone told me they read it and they thought it was very funny. I have no idea. I'm sorry? It's clever, right? I said, oh, hi, Tom. I didn't know you were here. Hi. Yeah, Tom, at that time, Tom was at NYIT, I think. You were at Lucasfilm by then? And he was reputed to be the best Unix programmer in the field, so I figured he's the one that should do it.
Just in case anybody cares, this same code was used to make, a couple of years later, to make the Return to Jail. The rebel briefing scene with the Death Star with a force field around it. That's the person.
I have a Tom Duff story that I tell people. I was at NYIT working in the middle of the night on artwork on Alvy's paint system, which had the potential to evolve. And I wanted a capability, I forget what it was, that I didn't have. Now, I had taken programming courses, but it was pretty clear to me that there were people in the environment who were so much better at that there was no point in my pursuing that. And they had no idea what I was doing, but they seemed to think it was kind of interesting, and they were happy to let me do that. So I wanted the software to do something else, and I saw Tom coming down the hall, okay, not that long a hall, and I was sitting on a chair on wheels in front of the monitor, and I pushed my chair back, and I said to Tom, could you write me a hack that would do yada, 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 and I pushed my chair back, and Tom sort of went like this, didn't even slow down his pace, and was gone, and it was done. And that was it. And I never tried to be a programmer again. Pose with me, too.
Are there any other questions or stories or?
I haven't seen you in so long.
Hi.
Hi, hi, hi.
It's good to see you. Yeah.
Oh, wait, go back. They want a picture.
Oh, they-
Go here. Let's get out of the way.
Let's stay. I'm into inclusion.
So we say that NYIT was a very early customer.
So did you remove my last slide for a reason? My list, you took off my last, no, I had one more and it's not here.
I should say for people doing archive work, I have a much better picture of that piece than you have on your website.
Oh,
because
great.
it hangs in the hallway at my house. and as it happens, I have a picture of it on my phone.
Oh, perfect.
So
This is exactly what we're hoping to get while we're here at SIGGRAPH, is information that we can provide to the community from primary sources. So thank you, Tom, so much for coming.
Yeah, so my last slide, I provided 2 pictures of my current work, but somehow that didn't make it into this revamped presentation. I'm very sorry.
You had a question? Yeah, where do you think we stand now on the question of what is the art?
I stand in the same place I always stood, which is art has to have aesthetic value. It should be I believe it needs to be a physical object. I personally am not interested in installation art or video or interactive things like that exactly. That said, my current work is mixed reality. I work as a visiting artist at the Future Reality Lab, Ken Perlin's lab, the one that has the cave upstairs. And I use tilt brush to paint 3D light sculptures around myself. I then take snapshots of those images from all kinds of different positions. Virtual snapshots, yes. And I put them in Photoshop and I create paintings out of them, which I then take up to Lightwork, which is a very high-end photography center in Syracuse. And I have B&H, which is a big photo company in New York, ship up bolts of canvas 60 inches wide or 42 or 44 inches wide by 50 feet long, and I print out my work on canvas. I have an art gallery, a good art gallery, and I do stretch and frame, have my work stretched and framed professionally. I'm not sure what else I can tell you about that. You can. I do have some cards here with some pictures on them. You're welcome to have those. I have a website and all of that stuff. My latest work is actually mixed reality, and I'm able to take my my VR light sculptures into Unity and onto my phone, and I can overlay them in whatever space I'm in and take snapshots of those and turn those into paintings. And I would have shown you some of those, but they didn't somehow make it onto this. They must have lost them. Yeah, it's hard for me to, I have a number of assistants in New York that do all kinds of things, but it's hard to keep the website really always up to date, even so. So it'll be a little bit before I get that stuff on. But anybody who wants to see some of that, I could show you a little bit of how that works on this phone.
Unfortunately, they want us out of here by 5. So thank you, everybody, for coming. And please come to our booth, because Darcy will be there. And that is Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the East Building.
In room 11, and our thanks are to every member of the panel and the students and everyone who has contributed to this art archive throughout the years.
And also tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, there's going to be a digital art community presentation in this very room. So please come back for that, because there's a lot of really interesting art exhibitions and other art opportunities